Welcome and thank you for joining us. I'm Brian Ross, and this is a special report from the Law and Crime Network and for our viewers on Facebook Live and YouTube Live. We're here to answer your questions about your job, your home, your health, your finances, and your rights. And joining me today is Law and Crime Network anchor Rachel Stockman from her home in Connecticut. And Rachel, you're home now with your husband and two children, including a newborn. How's it going?
Yeah, it's going well. Just hoping one of them won't walk in during this live shot here. But obviously, thankfully everyone's been healthy, so we're very lucky.
And Rich, you saw the big headline today in the New York Times saying it's terrifying. Millions more out of work.
Yes, over the last 3 weeks, 16.6 million people have filed for unemployment insurance. This is staggering, and it's numbers that our country really has never seen before. Because what is happening is a ripple down effect. We start with all these, non-essential businesses that have had to furlough or lay off workers, but it trickles down to the rest of the economy.
So lots of questions from our viewers about their jobs and their rights and employment insurance being furloughed. And we have two employment lawyers joining us today from New York, Luigi Izzo, who's a senior managing partner with the Berman Law Group, and from New York also, Felicia Ennis with the firm of Washaw Bernstein. Felicia, how goes for you? Are you still hearing from clients even though you're not in the office?
I am, Brian. I've been working remotely for the better part of the last 3 weeks, and so far I've been kept very busy answering and responding to client questions, questions from small business owners, questions from individuals. Everyone has questions concerning when they're going to get checks under the federal stimulus package, but so far everyone's healthy in my family, and thank goodness. And working from home has been an interesting transition, but still being productive.
And Luigi Izzo, I take it you're also from home and hearing from lots of people with questions about their jobs.
Absolutely, and we're hearing from all types of walks of life, from people that are higher up in law enforcement to bodega owners. Everyone has questions, a lot of answers that they're asking, and questions that they're wondering about what they're going to do next, to how bad it's going to get.
Right, a lot of uncertainty. And Luigi, let me start with you. Our first question from one of our viewers. I'm curious about people being furloughed versus being fired. How does that affect the ability to collect unemployment insurance?
Well, what everyone needs to keep in mind
Luigi?
is really simple. If you're willing and able to work and there is no employment right now, you're not collecting a check, there's no work for you, you should file unemployment. That's what it's there for. You're able to work, there is no work for you right now, even though your employer is going to take you back at a later date. Right now, you need to have income, you're able to work, there is no job for you, you should file.
All right. And Felicia Ennis, a question for you from a doctor in Idaho who lost her job. Watch her question she sent in by video.
I was asked to share my story about what happened in Boise, Idaho, being terminated for providing my own personal protective equipment, now commonly becoming known as PPE. I had worn it the first day. Second day, I was asked to take it off. I was told a number of reasons why I had to take it off. I don't know which one was true. I was told it was a hospital policy, of which I was never provided, that we couldn't wear our own protective personal equipment. And then another reason I was told is that if I wear my own N95 or personal protective equipment, then everybody would want to wear it, and they didn't have enough. So my concern, I have a lot of concerns. I was an independent contractor, which that's a very different position than an employed physician. But there's a couple of issues that I share with all of my colleagues. The first one I was warned of for speaking out was at some point being accused of slander for speaking out. So, that's a concern that I have. Is that going to come back and haunt me? Is that what I'm going to be labeled? Because I was labeled insubordinate. I'm concerned, about my future. I feel like I've doomed myself to ever be contracted again as a locums because I've been so vocal about this. But I choose to speak out because so many of my colleagues are literally afraid to speak out.
So what's the best advice for the doctor, Felicia Ennis?
Look, our healthcare workers are on the front lines. We need to protect them. We understand that there's been shortages of PPE equipment. We understand that healthcare workers have really had to step up to the challenge in terms of responding to the pandemic and to the health needs of our community. We do have certain whistleblower protection programs available for someone who believes that they've been retaliated against for speaking out on a condition or health concern in the workplace. And that would be under OSHA. And I would certainly urge her that if she believes she was retaliated against because she spoke out concerning a health issue in the workplace, to contact OSHA. She has a certain window of time within which she can do that. And she should certainly make her complaint there. And she should be protected from retaliation for speaking out on these very important issues.
Okay. Luigi, Ennis, are you seeing clients also who are being punished for speaking out?
Yes, we are. We are seeing people. There are people that we also see that have told their employer they tested positive. And then after they waited the initial 2 or 3 weeks and have confirmation from their doctors that they're clear to go return to work, oddly, all of a sudden, they're part of the cutbacks and they're not letting back. They're telling them that they have to lay them off because they have to actually cut back on employees due to financial reasons. But a lot of people believe in their minds that people are just scared to let them back in, even though they have the clearances, which is concerning at this time.
All right. Felicia, another question from one of our viewers just came in. We've been sent home to work and required to have internet. A co-worker's been working since then, has no internet. Does she have to get internet? Is this legal?
To the extent that you can set yourself up with internet, and your employer should be covering some of those costs. So I would say speak to your employer and see if your employer can cover those expenses. But certainly if it's work related and you're willing and able to work remotely, speak to your employer and see if they can help you set that up.
And for you, Luigi, a question. If myself or someone else was diagnosed with COVID-19, would we be able to collect workers' comp if we can't work?
Okay, well, that's a little bit of a complicated issue right now. Absolutely, the short answer would be yes. Obviously, if you're a healthcare worker, EMS worker, firefighter, police officer, it's foreseeable you're coming into contact with people in situations that you can catch a virus or an illness. Obviously, that would be seen as a work-related injury. I strongly suggest that people who work in those industries do seek workers' comp. Workers' comp will last longer than a 2-week short-term disability. It will avoid you from using your paid sick leave and your vacation days. Also, what it will do is that if you're one of those unlucky few of the small percentage that do pass away or have permanent scarring to their lungs, you'll be able to get compensated through the workers' comp system for any degree of disability you have for a body part like a lung or an organ. So it definitely would be the best route to go. And they should. I do know workers' comp attorneys that are being inundated right now with calls and are accepting clients as of today.
All right. Good, Luigi. Felicia, another question from one of our viewers. I'm getting unemployment. Do I have to accept a job during this time?
Well, again, when you're on unemployment, technically you're supposed to be ready, willing, and able to work. But if you have concerns about accepting another job due to the pandemic, I would say under the more flexible or relaxed standards that I've been seeing anyhow under state unemployment, and I would urge your viewers to check with their individual states, but I have been seeing some relaxed guidelines in terms of whether you must accept a job during this period of time.
All right. Now, Luigi, one final question for you before we take a break. From your point of view, are employers doing the right thing? Are they being good guys?
It's hard to say. Again, when people call me, they're usually the people that are calling me have issues going on. A lot of the employers, from what I'm hearing, aren't telling employees that they have the right to choose workers' comp. They're not saying not to do workers' comp. I think the employers have a better interest in having them do short-term disability because the state would take over and actually fund it instead of having a workers' comp insurance fund that the employer is paying through. I also think maybe they're not educated enough to allow people to start doing the workers' comp. But the main thing I do see is that everyone that I speak to, until I speak to them, they're not aware that they're able to file for workers' comp, and they're scared that their short-term disability ran out and they don't have sick days and they can't return to work. or they were tested positive and right now they're cleared to go back. They're not contagious, but they can't breathe still. Their lungs are still in a state of chaos. I mean, it's been ravaged by this disease. So the most important thing, if anyone can take away from this, is that if you believe it's a work-related illness and you got it on the job site, you should seek a workers' comp attorney to see if you have your rights in file.
If you're just joining us, you're watching a special report from the Law and Crime Network. And for our viewers on Facebook Live and YouTube Live, your rights, your questions during this COVID-19 crisis. And Rachel Stockman, the big issue now are the heroes on the front lines, not the soldiers, but the doctors and nurses, the people who stock our grocery stores and make deliveries. They're really having a tough time.
Yeah, and I heard some of these grocery workers commenting, listen, these healthcare workers, these doctors that sign up to be emergency room physicians, in some ways, they know the risk, right? They know the risk of what they're signing up for. But when you're a clerk at a grocery store or you're making deliveries as your employment, you're not really thinking when you signed up for that job that you're putting your health at risk every single day. So it opens up, Ryan, this whole new set of issues for these workers that are so valuable to us right now that we've never had to face before.
And we've seen again and again, Rachel, these workers putting their lives on the line with stories coming to us from all across the country.
Absolutely, we have. And you wouldn't think being a grocery clerk or someone that stocks the shelves at Kroger would put your life in danger, but it really is when you're seeing hundreds and hundreds of people come into that store every day. And let's say your employer is not able to provide you any protective gear, because we're talking about the shortage for nurses and doctors, but we haven't even reached the issue of all of these grocery store workers and essential workers that also need this protective gear that aren't able to get it.
And take a look at some of the stories coming into us from what's happening across the country.
Employees now suing the retailer, claiming they did not provide protective gear.
The wrongful death suit claims the store failed to notify employees that others had symptoms of the virus.
To grocery stores, where at least 5 employees at supermarket chains all across the country have died from the virus, including 2 at the same Chicago area Walmart.
An employee at a Richmond manufacturing company has died due to the complications of the coronavirus.
A Salem Market Basket employee who was diagnosed with COVID-19 has died. The female employee last worked at the store on March 26th.
This is Leilani Jordan. She worked at a local grocery store, and despite the growing coronavirus pandemic, she insisted on doing her job to help elderly customers. Leilani died last week from coronavirus.
And now some more questions for our 2 employment lawyers, Luigi Izzo and Felicia Ennis. Let me start with you, Luigi, a question from one of our viewers. What should I do if I haven't received payment from unemployment and it's been 3 weeks?
That's a good question. Obviously, as we know, we have 16 million people applying for unemployment. It's unprecedented. I know, speaking to some clients, that they've been on the phone for days trying to call the phones and trying to get through the New York State government lines to actually just even make an application to get workers' comp. I know of one individual that was on speed dial from 8 o'clock in the morning till I believe 7 o'clock at night and never got through for 3 days in a row. The only thing I can tell you is obviously government agencies, the offices are closed. You have to just be diligent. You have to continue to call and get through. The only way you're going to be able to do is to stay on the line and keep dialing and be persistent, because quite frankly, right now, there is no one out there that's going to be able to help you. The unemployment buildings are closed. You can't just walk into somewhere and say, I need to speak to somebody.
And Felicia Ennis, a question sent in by one of our viewers about her concerns about what happens with the virus and fast food outlets. Look at this video.
Hi, I'm Sammy Filati. My question is, what are the responsibility of the fast food takeout service to the public? For example, if an employee in a fast food service is not wearing protective gear while making or serving the food to the public, would there be any liability if you catch the virus from that situation?
What's the answer to that, Felicia Ennis?
Well, I mean, in terms of what the latter part of what he was saying, if there would be any liability, I think there may be some issue of causation or trying to prove that you indeed caught the virus from that particular fast food worker. But certainly we know now, Brian, that the CDC has adopted certain additional guidelines for wearing face masks in public. There was also a protocol that they laid out yesterday in terms of the type of measures that employers should be taking for essential workers, including workers in the food industries. So I would certainly say that if an establishment is not following those guidelines or hasn't started to implement some of those guidances, potentially then you would be able to report them to local authorities.
And Luigi, a question from one of our viewers. Can a company make you use your vacation or discretionary time during this time if they close down for a week or two? Luigi?
Well, technically, if they close down for a week or two, but you're still receiving a paycheck, the route that I see employers are doing, like we discussed earlier, is having short-term disability and then use your vacation pay or sick time. If you're still receiving a check just because the company's closed, you're still receiving a check from somewhere. So yes, the short answer to that would be yes, they would have to require you unless you opted out to now go into unemployment and had the option to do so.
So they can force you to take vacation time and you wouldn't have a vacation later in the year, perhaps.
Absolutely. And that's what they're trying. That's what's been going on right now. And a lot of people are already running out of it. Many people don't have a lot of days. They have a few days. And if they did short-term disability for the initial first 2 weeks and you used up the last 5 days of your vacation, there's really no other option at that point.
All right. Felicia, here's a question from one of our viewers. Before the virus began, my husband got laid off due to the weather and got denied unemployment because he didn't have enough time in. Will he qualify now for unemployment?
Potentially he would under expanded unemployment. I would definitely counsel your viewer to have her husband reapply because, again, rules have changed, so he may now be eligible.
From what you see, are the benefits that they've talked about coming out of this new CARE Act, the checks haven't shown up yet. Are these benefits going to be real, you think? Are they actually having an impact, Felicia?
I know that the checks are starting to come out. I know here in New York, took a while for the infrastructure to get set up for these new stimulus package checks, along with the state portion of unemployment benefits. But according to my sources, those checks are starting to roll out now as we speak. And hopefully people who are applying for unemployment or have applied in the last week or two can expect those checks, hopefully within the next week or two, looking forward.
Luigi, let me ask you this. President Trump is talking about reopening the country by May 1st. Whenever it does reopen, as the jobs start to come back, what are some of the issues you foresee coming up?
People aren't going to still trust the environment. You're going to have people that are afraid. They're not going to want to go back. They're not going to want to have close contact with each other. You have different types of employment and jobs out there where people really work in large groups, like manufacturing, construction workers, and those types of industries where people are on top of each other. Even though they're saying it's safe to go back to work, I would imagine that a lot of people are going to be scared to return. At the very least, these employers and these big corporations like Walmart are going to have to probably still implement and keep these safe measures in place for a lot longer than May 1st. I don't foresee it coming back that soon. I believe this is going to go on quite a couple more months. I mean, we speak to healthcare physicians in hospitals on all different levels, and they're saying right now people are living there 4 weeks at a time. The directors haven't seen their families in 4 weeks, and they don't see this ending anytime soon.
And in this world, Luigi, what recourse do workers have against a big company that says you've got to go back to work and you don't need a mask, et cetera?
Well, I like to say there's like a pre-corona time, and now we're in a post-corona time. Pre-corona laws, like we touched on earlier, OSHA says that employees don't have to provide masks unless it's a specific job, like if you're a steam fitter or if you're working with, like construction workers, welding and stuff like that. There's OSHA laws that say they have to wear masks. And then there's like a little niche in the law that basically says if an employer is aware of a known danger and health risk, they have to supply safety. Well, I guess now post-corona, we'd probably be able to apply it and say, well, these employers now it's necessary to provide masks, to provide gloves, to provide safety equipment. If they fail to do so, there would be repercussion under the OSHA law saying that they failed to protect their employees from a known danger, and it's a known safety issues that we have to provide to keep these people safe as they work. Because if they don't, they're going to end up closing their doors, and then we'll be in bigger trouble.
And Felicia, what's your take on that? What rights do workers have in this post-corona era?
I agree with what Luigi said. In addition, I would say that we've already started to see with the CDC guidelines that we're looking now, beyond the past few weeks to see what the workplace or the new workplace environment will look like when workers start returning to the office and to the business. And I think we can look at some of the CDC guidelines for essential workers and how they've laid out a template on what to do with essential workers returning after either exposure to COVID-19 or if they themselves had COVID-19, and certainly certain measures that the CDC is expecting employers to implement in the workplace to protect their workers.
Absolutely. And Rachel Stockman, as you watch all this, there's going to be a huge backlog in the courts once they get going again, right?
Yeah, because the truth of the matter, Brian, is that the courts are backlogged to begin with. They cannot start, especially civil cases, take years and years to go through the court system. Now you're going to have 2, 3, maybe 4 months, however long this lasts, where courtrooms are closed down for the most part. There's going to be a huge backlog in civil cases. So, a lot of people are going to be going to Felicia, to try to sue. But I don't know if there's going to be any quick resolution with justice at such a halt right now. And I will say there are a lot of municipalities and bigger court systems that are trying to employ virtual courtrooms and use Zoom conferencing and these other services that they can, but not all have
Thank you,
figured that
Rachel.
out yet.
So my thanks to Felicia and Luigi and Rachel. Thank you so much. Brian Ross here. Join us again next week.